All right, a few days ago, precisely on Tuesday, we brought you the Northwest Peace and Security Summit. Now, that summit has ended in Katsina State, and there are high hopes that insecurity will take the backseat, if not minimized to the barest minimum, and of course, the much needed peace restored going forward.
Well, an earnest desire, Claire, if you ask me, going by the indices of insecurity in not just that region, but in the country as a whole. Well, Good Morning, Nigeria on Tuesday assembled guests from Katsina and here in Abuja to examine what this will portend for the nation.
All right, the much we know about the outcome of that meeting is that security experts called for development of a work plan, of course, with specific timelines for implementation of the resolutions. And it is expected that the resolutions and the action plans and implementation will bring lasting solution to the security crisis in that region. Now, also suggested is the composition of a monitoring team to follow up on the issues discussed at the summit. And they say, of course, that will be necessary.
And going by the data provided by one of the guests, about 40% of kidnap cases in Nigeria takes place in the Northwest region. And they agree that the summit comes at a critical time when security challenges in the Northwest geopolitical zone is escalating, especially banditry.
Absolutely, and the situation leaves in its trail significant loss of lives, property, and severe disruption of livelihoods. Indeed, the IRC, that's of course the International Rescue Commission, says the level of humanitarian crisis in that region is alarming. And security experts have also attributed the situation to poverty, not forgetting the porous borders, unmanned, grasslands, proliferation of small arms and light weapons. All of these, were, mentioned, and they also reiterated the need for coordinated action to restore peace and stability in that area.
Well, they also insist that key players who were at the summit, which is in collaboration with the United Nations development programs, should go beyond interrogating the root causes of the Northwest crisis to developing a framework for addressing them with implementation plans and timelines.
Of course, Victor, the issue is always with implementation, and there is no doubt that the action plan, of course,
we always have plans.
We always have plans, and as we hear, there have been previous recommendations, though not by this elaborate composition, but there have been recommendations on how to address the issues in the Northwest specifically. Yeah. But of course, just like every other person, the security experts at that summit are hoping that the summit will provide, the summit has provided some positive outcomes, but yeah, the hope is that there will be coordinated security approaches and, use of technology as well as inclusive information gathering to help, curtail the trajectory going on in that area, or if you may, the dynamics of the conflict in the Northwest. And so again today, we will, revisit the issue of the Northwest Peace Summit, which, as we said earlier on, has just ended in Katsina State. And there are the resolutions that we will be looking at. If they are made available, we will be, discussing some of those resolutions. We will have one or two security experts who were part of the summit in Katsina to really brief us and, give us probably, the lights.
An action plan?
The lights. From what they say, we'll be able to decipher whether or not we're on track. All right, so I am Claire Adilabo Abdulrazak, and thank you for being our company this morning.
Well, we've hinted earlier that we do have a second topic, which is on the 2024 MSMEs Day. I am Victor Azo. Thank you for joining us. We are reaching you on the network service of the NTA. Newspaper review will come a bit later, just so that Mina Daniels can deliver highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Mina.
Very well, Victor. Good morning to you. And Claire, good morning, Nigeria. Here now is the morning news. A mixed reactions trailed the proposed amendment to the Police Act, proposing review of the services of police personnel from 35 to 40 years in service and 60 to 65 years as retirement age. At a one-day public hearing on a bill for the Act to amend the Nigerian Police Act 2020 and related matters, the House Committee on Police Affairs received submissions from divergent views.
The extension of the service years of Nigerian police officers offers a unique perspective on the complexity of modern-day policing. Crime governance in the 21st century demands strategic police crime management expertise and tools.
It is critical to the development and strengthening of the Nigerian police force. As such, the committee cannot unilaterally decide on the proposed bill.
Some good news, Nigeria is initiating more programs that will improve access to drug use prevention, early detection and treatment services to address the challenges of a current national and global drug abuse burden. This was contained in a message of the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Mohammed Ali Pate, at a news conference in Abuja to commemorate the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking 2024.
Each one of you to join hands in this noble cause. Investing in prevention today will yield dividends of a healthier, safer tomorrow.
Nigeria will continue to contribute positively in the global effort to contain the consequences of illicit substances. As we commemorate the World Drug Day, let us renew our commitment to prevention.
The federal government has introduced an integrated export and import certification system for easy movement of agricultural produce in and out of the country. The certificate, which will be issued by the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service, is also aimed at addressing issues associated with the rejection of Nigerian agricultural produce.
Basically, what the system does is that traders who want to export agricultural commodities can apply for their phytosanitary certificates. The phytosanitary certificate is like a health certificate that states that a commodity leaving Nigeria to an importing country is free from pests and diseases that may prevent the commodity from being accepted in that country.
It will enhance efficiency and accuracy in safeguarding the imports and exports of agricultural produce, and we are hopeful that this will help to curb the rejection of our exported agricultural products.
Unwholesome land practice has been reported to be one of the causes of most climate impact man is facing today, with about 10 billion livelihoods dependent on land use on the verge of vanishing if aggressive land restoration is not undertaken before 2050. This was one of the topical issues discussed at the 2024 World Desertification and Drought Day, organized by the Federal Ministry of Environment.
Resolve to use our land in a more sustainable manner. We should not overexploit the land. Overgrazing should be avoided.
Take like 40 years before we can get close to addressing the level of degradation.
And those are the highlights of the news this morning. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Victor after this commercial break. Please don't go.
The federal government of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Imagine lovely meals you can cook with these ingredients. You spend heavily, but no guarantee of a tasty meal. Not making a right choice of seasoning cube can ruin your meal, money, and confidence. For a tasty meal, do not compromise. Choose Gold.
Use Terra Gold for the rich, consistent taste your loved ones crave for. Good for soups, stews, and jollof. Terra Gold. 1 cube, endless possibilities.
The new Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. So, no need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish and energize your kids. Milo 3-in-1 is such a smart choice. Milo, energy to go further.
From Nestle.
In a world hungry for goodness, with a splash of golden Terra oil, a mom can transform a frown into a smile. Make a lunch hour a happy hour. Change no thanks into yes please. Provide care when our nearest and dearest needs it most. And resolve family feuds without blowing a whistle. Providing tasty, nourishing family meals is all that matters. The world needs moms, because where there are moms, there is hope, happiness, and love. Golden Terra Oil, for pure love.
A good farmer is a craftsman of the highest order. It is said, great farmer, great nation. No farmer, no nation. Yes, let's set the ball rolling to build that great Nigeria where good food is in abundance, affordable and easily accessible. The Renewed Hope Initiative, RHI, an initiative of the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, CON, is aligning with the vision and aspiration of the administration of President Bola Tinubu, GCFR, and is organizing the Every Home a Garden competition. The competition is under the scope of agriculture of the Renewed Hope Initiative. For the competition, women are encouraged to immediately plant a garden at home, such that the harvest can provide adequate food on their table and enough to give their neighbor. This competition is open to only women. She must be a first-time farmer. The garden must be in her home, and it is open to women in every state of the Federation and the FCT. Interested participants should do a 30-second video and a picture of the garden, which indicates its location, to the office of the First Ladies of their various states. The winner of this competition will be announced in December 2024, and the winner of the competition goes home with 20 million naira. Women, join the train. Be part of the food revolution in Nigeria. What are you waiting for? Let's get to work. This message is by the Renewed Hope Initiative, RHI, an initiative of the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, CON.
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
We continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country, and that God has kept, together as one indivisible entity.
Euro 2024, live on Sporty TV.
You're welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria, and it's happening live on the network service. Coming up will be news making the headlines on Newspaper Review in just a moment.
All right, and the man to serve the review is here seated. Chukwudi Okoli-Ubaja, welcome to Good
Hello,
Morning
Victor.
Nigeria.
Good morning. How are you today?
Well, I'm all right. I can be better.
You're beside Claire. Claire, how are you doing yourself?
Very well, Chukwudi, good morning. Good to see you once again.
Same here.
Yes, let's quickly start up with the newspaper review, and we're beginning with the New Telegraph. The lead story, it's on the 2023 budget. Lawmakers in dilemma over capital appropriation. To extend decision on implementation, request allegedly forwarded by President Tinubu as initial deadline ends in 3 days. And just below the picture story, you have alleged 432 billion naira fraud. El-Rufai slams 1 billion naira rights on suit on Kaduna Assembly. And there are also other stories trending. Attempt to bomb hotel presidential ploy to impose state of emergency. That's the River State Governor Fubara. And of course, you also see him in that picture story having a handshake with some of the members of the Senate Committee on Privatization who visited Government House Port Harcourt yesterday. ASU reconsiders decision on strike after meeting with FG. It's on page 3. And governors hold final decision on minimum wage, local government autonomy. Now, prevention, most potent weapon in curbing drug abuse. President Tinubu and Marwa NDLE arrested 52,901 traffickers and others. And on the foreign scene, Kenya's president withdraws tax plan after deadly protest. Let's take a quick look at the stories just below the nameplate. And Shatima, that's vice president, Tinubu determined to redefine modern leadership concept, says president not against the North. And while we are intervening on federal roads, that's from the Delta State government. And there are other stories just above the nameplate there. Cardoso, capital raise will create stronger and more resilient banks. Okay, that's the outlook from the New Telegraph.
All right, let's get the leadership now. And it leads with this major headline. Oronsai report, 4 months after FG foot drags on merger of MDAs. Delay causing anxiety among civil servants. SGF, head of service, keep mum. That story is on page 4. 432 billion naira fraud. El-Rufai files 1 billion naira damages suit against Kaduna Assembly. You can get the details of that on page 4. And just above the nameplate, Dangote refinery fire contained, operations ongoing, page 29. And then 8 students drowned in Kaduna River. That one is on page 18. We move on to the Daily Sun now. And the Daily Sun leads with a major headline. Minimum wage, Labour rejects Tinubu's position, describes president's pronouncement to consult with stakeholders as unfortunate, silent on next step. Governors meet over wage, others. You can get details of all of that on page 6. FG, ASU move to avert a fresh strike. That one is just beside the nameplate, and you can get details on page 6. I think some of the orders here we have read in the other papers. Senate holds emergency session, may consider supplementary budget for Tinubu's presidential jets. That one is on page 6. And finally, we just take this Nnamdi Kanu moves to appeal court over jurisdictional issue. Details on page 5. We are not fighting anyone, Fubara tells Senate. Kalu urges Wike, governor, to sheath sword. That story is on page 27. I think we can leave it here.
Chukwudi,
yes.
Let's take the lead story from the New Telegraph. It's talking about the decision to, of course, extend the implementation of the appropriation over capital. What do you think? There was a prior request by the president
to extend what?
To extend the budget, the
yes.
appropriation over budget, capital budget, 2023 capital budget,
yes.
to extend the implementation period.
But there must be a reason given for it. Is the reason that would justify or make you want to analyze the advantages or disadvantages of it? And any reason advanced there? I didn't quite see that stuff.
Yes, yes. It's the lead story.
Okay.
It's the lead story. Well, you somehow, you know, when these requests are made, we don't know, but the paper is saying...
It's definitely to meet a contingency. A shortfall has been noticed somewhere. When you plan, you don't plan excellently. You don't plan perfectly. You plan to the best of your ability, to the best of your vision. But you are not caught in the concrete of planning. You are immersed in the flexibility of planning. So when there is any need to change what had been arranged, you go ahead and do that. I want to think that there must be a
there's been one earlier. How many supplementary budgets?
Yeah, of course, yes.
But you know,
I thought
there's a timeline
around it.
No, but it's what we're supposed to review. Is the lead story on the front page of a newspaper?
It's the front page of one newspaper. Yes. There are so many.
No, that's
after
so usually there is a time frame.
Okay.
For budget implementation.
Of course, yes.
This supplementary and the other one was supposed to have ended.
Naturally. 3
days from now, which is June 30th. And by which time, I want to, presume that the implementation, whatever they were budgeted for, would have been implemented, would have been done. So probably...
You're assuming the resources for that implementation came when they should come. We are living in hard times. There must have been a shortfall in providing that which you need.
In utilizing the fund.
Yeah.
Probably. Maybe you still have the fund, so you have not fully utilized the fund.
Yeah.
So you need more time to finish it before you commence on the 2024 budget.
Let's not delve too much into the territory of guesswork. What I'm thinking is that if they are extending, it is because the implementation has not happened the way it should happen. And because of the shortfall in revenue, you're likely to find out that part of the reason is that the monies did not quite come in time. You can budget, but that's not to say you automatically
Aren't we all assuming at the end of the day?
That's it. It's okay. That's why I said.
But don't forget that, again, the impact of that on the 2024 budget. Which means the 2024 budget, what happens to the 2024 budget? Will there be a pari passu implementation? Hold on. Will there be a simultaneous implementation of the supplementary budget and the 2024 budget?
Claire, if you're standing beside me or behind me, and suddenly I feel a pressure up front there that requires me to say, Claire, please, can you shift a little? I'm going to do that. And you're going to treat that as completely human. You understand? Don't cast them in concrete. That's the point I started with. There is a reason for asking for the... So what we hope is that that reason is going to be justified, and whatever has created the reason for asking for it would be met at the end of the day. That's it. It's planning.
It's not that it's unconstitutional to ask for. No, it's not. No, it's not. We're just trying to find out.
It's not casting concrete.
Let's take a look at this. The 4 months after FG Food Drugs on merger of MDAs. At the point, it was a major issue for us here.
Can we have that on the screen?
That's leadership.
The leadership.
Leave the director and his people to act into what you're saying. Just go on.
Can we have it?
At the point we were discussing it, we thought that it was imminent. We even had we had Bayononga here who told us that this was a sign of political will.
One of the early pronouncements by the Tinubu administration was the slimming down of MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies. And people applauded it because we thought that the bloating some people suspect or allege in these MDAs would finally be taken care of. For us to stay 4 months into it, now remember the Oronsaya report came in 2012. 2012, many administrations have sidestepped it, you know. We applauded the Tinubu administration for trying to take the bull by the horns and say, look, waste is not going to be allowed and all that. Again, what is the reason for delaying it? We don't want to get in again into the territory of guesswork. Government will tell you, he who wears the shoes know where they pinch. You understand? Some people said part of the reason the APC was saying so many things they were saying initially was that they had not got into government. When they got into government, some of them found out that it's not really as easy as, you know, when I say government, I mean federal government. PDP started off and all that. You know, so many things would happen to a man, a woman, to make them change, you know, what they had thought was going to be a promptly implemented vision.
You know, it's really, like you said, it's not as seamless as people will think.
It never is.
Yes, for instance,
try managing
there are a lot of metrics, you know,
yes,
that will need to be, you know, investigated. A lot of frame issues. You know, for instance, when the news came out and the issue of merging some, you know, media houses together. I mean, you were on a platform.
Did you not feel a little, you know, shaky about it? Because merging would mean that Victor, for instance, if we had a radio station, for instance, we could use Victor on TV and also send him to the radio hour. That would enable us slim down in terms of the number of the boots on the ground, so to speak, handling the chores we have in NTA, which is audio, radio, TV in this scenario.
It was like that.
And there's a social cost. The social cost is that you would push some people into unemployment. And sometimes government will tell you, we know that this money could have been saved, but we also don't want to push these boys into unemployment and they start thinking like criminals. So government at all times is contending with so many things that may not be easily
But
available
when there is
to
communication,
normal.
Yes, it's easier, you know, you carry people along, not just to go high and then quiet.
Okay, Chukwudi, let's look at another story. Again, I'm taking this story from the New Telegraph. ASU reconsiders decision on strike.
That's after meeting.
After meeting with the federal government.
Yes.
And I know that what do you think?
What I know, not what I think, is that inflexibility should never play a part in men's lives. ASU decided, hey, look, we're going to warn them again about an impending strike, a looming strike and all that. But it takes me back to what I always preach here. Jaw it, don't war it. When people talk, what you think is insurmountable, what you think is intractable, begins actually to be doable by the parties concerned, the parties to the conflict. So talking does a lot. In a marriage, in the community, in government, everywhere. The government that suffers most is the government that does not engage in dialogue with the people of the polity.
Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I had thought that we'll be able to say a word or two about Labour rejecting the president's position that he would consult afresh.
All right, Chukwudi, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
It's okay. Thank you. The president and Labour would eventually agree. Find out.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll start our conversation on Northwest Peace and Security Summit.
savannah to the Sahara. We rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree. We sway in colors, with undoubted demand. We bet solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria, strengthening unity. We know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria. Together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Name a role that seems to always exist in most Nollywood movies.
Wicked stepmother.
Ritualist.
A wealthy man.
King. Mention an activity that requires using your lips.
Or risking it with eating.
Is smiling. Kiss.
I go with sock.
How do you do that? I really don't know what that is.
I come on.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Euro 2024, live on Sporty TV.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. To begin our conversation on the outcome of Northwest Peace and Security Summit, here are excerpts of our previous conversation on Tuesday put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The existence of multinationals in Nigeria is considered a major contributor.
As far back as 5-10 years or even earlier, when you go on the streets of Kaduna, where I come from, you know that we are going to walk into a problem very sooner or later. Okay. Because of the children you see then, 5, 6, 10 years, on the street, out of school, begging, and so on and so forth. Do you ask yourself the simple question, where will these guys be in the next 10 years? When they will be 15, 16, 20, what would they be doing? So if you look at maybe the industries and so on, in the northwestern region, farming that used to be the major preoccupation and so on. So the incidence of poverty is there, but it's also increasing every day.
Now,
we have succeeded in extricating 13 local governments from the shackles of the bandits. In the last 8 months or 9 months, we have not had any attack in Kenkia, Bindawa, Ingawa, Cherenchi, Batagarawa, Katsina, and also even some part of Dusama local government. So this goes to show you that government is, the effort of government is yielding results.
My expectations is to have a work plan, a framework like mentioned by Dr. Kabiru and the Honorable Commissioner, and to have a team of monitoring, a monitoring team that will follow up, and a tracker to identify who will do what, when, why, how, and where. And at the same time to have a timeline frame for every activity as identified, and to also have a monitoring indicator to each, a kind of a linkage between the activity and the monitor as well as the tracker.
Most of the formal border points as well as informal border points in the northern part of the country are not protected. So there is free flow of both material, transhumans, and humans across the border into those states that are contributing to those security challenges. Drug proliferation and addiction is also another challenge. The collapse of the value system, that is also very unfortunately prominent. And in that regard, the family system, there is a cultural, I would say, deficiency in the Northwest that unfortunately in some cultural communities within the Northwest where the family system is collapsing increasingly. The father wakes up in the morning, does not care.
All right, of course, you just heard Dr. Kabiru Adamu. He was one of our guests on Tuesday when we took up these issues of security, Peace and Security Summit in the Northwest, of course, that took place in Katsina. And fortunately, we have Dr. Kabiru Adamu right here with us in the studio to speak further on, probably the solutions or outcome of the 2 days Peace and Security Summit. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, thank you very much. And by the way, he's a security risk management expert. We're glad you could join us this morning.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
All right, Victor.
Well, we're expecting other guests actually, and we will introduce them as they become available to us. But let me ask Dr. Kabiru Adamu, since you were there in Katsina, what were the resolutions and how did you arrive at them?
Thank you. It's important to mention that there was no official communique that was released at the end of the conference. There was a closed-door meeting between the governors, 7 of them, and I think the governor of Niger State as well. He was represented there by the deputy governor of the state. They had a closed-door session with the UN system and the governments of Germany and Netherlands who had facilitated the conference. And they did announce in the farewell or thank the message that was released by the governor at the end of the conference. He did indicate that a committee has been set up. The committee would comprise membership from each of the 7 states, and then the UN system would also nominate 5 persons. Okay. And then perhaps a group of other experts as well will also join. And what that committee would do, it's been given a timeline of 2 weeks. Within that 2 weeks, it will produce a report on the conference. It will produce an action plan with key performance indicators that would now allow for the measuring of the implementation. The governor of Katsina State also indicate that what they intend to do is to outline short-term, medium-term, and long-term resolutions in terms of what they intend to achieve. And more importantly, which I found really interesting, is the fact that the responsibility component would also be indicated in the report and in the action plan. In other words, the stakeholders that were brought together, who among them would have responsibility for implementing what. In other words, a guideline for the implementation of the resolutions of the conference will be contained in that report. So I guess we have the next 10 days or thereabout to wait for the release of that report that will give us a clear indication. Perhaps in the course of the conversation we can look at the technical sessions. There were 5 technical sessions that were held, and it will give the listener an indication of what kind of resolutions will be contained in that report.
But do you see a pathway to successful implementation that is essentially, arriving at the conclusions that are anticipated?
I'm quite optimistic, and my optimism is rooted in the goodwill that I saw, the passion that I saw, and a different approach, I would say, from the crop of governors that were there. I wouldn't describe them as young, but they were in an age bracket that I think could relate to what their various states were going through. The governor of Zamfara state found a very interesting way to engage with the audience. The governor of Katsina state as well, Jigawa state. So it was quite interesting really to see the crop of governors because during the conference, each of the governors spoke. He presented a paper, his perspective on how to address the security challenges. One interesting thing that emerged is that there are divergent views on certain issues. I'll give you an example. State police, the concept of state police. I know there is a lack of harmony or understanding of what state police and policing means. But it came up during the discussion. The representative of the governor of Kaduna State, as an example, was almost 100% supportive of the creation of state police. The other governors were a little bit silent on it, even though in their conversations you could see them mentioning things like community engagement and the need for the communities to be involved in the security management practice within their states. The other thing that also came up, which I'm hoping will be part of the report, is the regional cooperation. Let's not forget that the theme of the conference itself is regional cooperation for securing lives and livelihood. So it appears that there is an orientation towards regional cooperation. And just to emphasize, and so that the listener understands why that is relevant, some of the threat elements that we're dealing with in that region, an example, the bandits, a significant number of them use the forested parts of the region to operate. Now, those forested parts link almost to 7 states. Yeah. You can be in one forest and don't come out of it, and you traverse the 7 states. And more significantly, leave the northwest and enter the north central. So whatever one state does, if the others don't join, it would be futile. Because as an example, if there is a military operation, let's say in Katsina, and you don't block the borders, they move over to another state. So that team is actually very significant, and if it's achieved, it will go a long way towards reducing some of the security challenges. So that's what is giving me optimism. If by the time we discuss some of the technical issues that were discussed, as an example, economic viability of the region, I had concepts like comparative advantage, competitive advantage coming up. Jigawa, as an example, they produce wheat, they produce rice. Those are competitive advantages. In the area of power, especially with the what I would describe as decentralization of power, allowing states to now generate power. Some of the concepts that were discussed include, for instance, generating power through renewable energy. Katsina with the comparative and competitive advantages. Zamfara, the same thing. So that's the thing that gives me joy. I would also want to emphasize that the UN system has a lot of capacity and capability in supporting, especially peace building. And that came up in the course of the conference. And I'm also hoping that the mistakes that were made in the Northeast would help the UN system to avoid a repetition of those mistakes in the Northwest. Because they supported the growth of the peace building processes that we're seeing in the Northeast, in particular the UNDP that was part of that session. So that's kind of what gives me optimism. In closing, in my remarks on this, one thing that I also found quite instructive is the UN, in spite of the fact that they could have driven the process, rather facilitated the process. So, in other words, what we're seeing is a homegrown solution, so to speak, by Nigerians, supported by our international partners. And I think that's the way to go. If, unlike what we are used to seeing in the past.
Very interesting way to put it, Dr. Kabiru. Adamu, homegrown security solutions facilitated by our international partners. I'm glad to announce that Dr. Usagetso, security intelligence and investigation expert and also consultant to the Katsina State government, has joined us via Zoom. I've been learning to sound your name since on Tuesday. I'll try to get it right without having to bite my tongue. Dr. Yauza, get so? On Tuesday, you outlined, areas of expectation, your areas of expectation from the Peace and Security Summit. I'm sure you were also there. Dr. Kabir has told us there was no official communique. Rather, committees were formed and they were given, timelines to come up with framework of action and all that. Do you think this has met your expectation, and do you think there is a paradigm shift in this concluded Peace and Security Summit?
Good morning. Have a review. The summit considered were itemized in terms of reviewing what was done before, what has not been done, and what's supposed to be done. And at the same time, experts were given opportunity to explore and express their mindsets and knowledge, shared vision. And at the same time, there is a kind of holistic approach and holistic review where each and every one of the participants, including the governors, were able to look at the gaps and accept some of the mistakes and shortcomings. And it is based on that, outlined strategies and recommendations were discussed. Yes, I am quite convinced and confident that I believe in the outcome of the summit, having a short communique, having a committee set up, given 3 weeks to come up with a framework and the strategy for implementation. And I expect that strategy to include time frame for each activity identified, and to have expected outcome, and to have a tracking tool and a tracking strategy, and to have a monitoring and supervision system, and also to have a feedback mechanism on quarterly basis, so that by the end of 1 year, we will reconvene and review commitment, where we will outline the total number of bandits that load their arms, the total number of bandits that were neutralized, the total number of new vision improvement in governance, the total number of improvement in terms of agricultural business improvement, in terms of reduction on unemployment, in terms of number of communities that are back to their places, in terms of reduction of number of farmland that have been cultivated. As I'm talking to you now, we have a data of the total number of communities that were prevented from cultivating their farmlands in the last 3 years. So we want to see in the next 1 year the reduction. We want to see more economic activities, whereby somebody will move from Sokoto to Talata Mapara, to Mayanchi, to Maru, to Gusau, to Saife, to Kucheri, up to Puntu and Zaria free, without having a fear at least to have a reduction of that fear. And also a movement within other lines of Jibia, Gidan Jaja, Zurmi, Kauran Namoda, Shinkafi, Isa, Gorenyo, and all other places where this banditry activity is affected. So if we see more number of travels and improvement in economic activities and also improvement in governance and commitment, we will have to hold the governors accountable on what they have promised to do. So if we can have this, I'm convinced and confident on the outcome. Otherwise, it is just a business as usual.
All right, Dr. Getso, thank you very much for your opening remarks. We will get back to you as we continue the conversation, but let's just make welcome here in the studio Abutu Yaro, who is a retired AIG Zone 13, former CP Edo, Zamfara, and Imo States. He's also been CP Federal Operations Commander, Counter-Terrorism Training School, Port Harcourt. We welcome you to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, you have had the privilege of listening to Dr. Yahuza Getso, but I would like you to take a look for us. Let's just look at the last 10 years of the North-West, where you have also been privileged to hold office as CP. What's your assessment between then and now, the last 10 years? What has changed and how did we get here? What do we need to do as it is now to make the desired progress?
Thank you very much for having me. And taking it from the format of the question, I would like to put it in this way. In the last 10 years, between then and now, including the period I served there at the top level of security, the challenges still remain the same. And the solution is yet to be fully implemented. From my own practical experience and engagement, the challenges in Northwest, particularly with banditry, is more or less a byproduct of neglect and vacuum of governance. I repeat, neglect and vacuum of governance. The insecurity in Northwest, particularly in the area where I served, which in some literature they call it epicenter now. We came to a empirical conclusion that these people are resenting maltreatment. And that's why you see them attacking farmers, villagers, and last. I have interacted with them and asked them this question: why are we where we are? And they told me, or my team, that they are where we are because of abysmal neglect. Neglect in terms of infrastructure, neglect of inclusiveness, neglect in terms of even economic freedom and social justice. Let me itemize it. They used to talk and complain with nostalgia their existential circumstances during the Sardauna era. They used to say that even elementary facilities like Earth Dam that were operating during Sardauna time, they are no longer there and they are not maintaining anything. They used to complain equally too that simple, responsive engagement, like availing them veterinary services, which they say their fathers enjoy under Sardauna, is no longer there. Veterinary services in the sense that government veterinary department will come and inoculate the animals free. Government to make provision for where they do grazing unhindered. Apart from the Northwest, the whole of former northern Nigeria, we had what we call forest reserves. And by the vision of Sardauna government, the essence of forest reserve was that people like this, who are grazers, hunters,
And people who actually are loving nature could always come there and express themselves. But if you look at our map today, where are the forest reserves? Now, beside that, even there's no inclusive governance. In the Northwest, particularly in the area I served, these headers are aboriginal personalities. They are not migrant headers there. They are indigenous. Their forefathers were born there. But the services available to their contemporaries who are in the township, they don't have it. And they used to ask me, because I done as a CP, they will ask you, because they see the CP as personification of government. And they were free to talk to me, because they used to tell me, open their heart, in the sense that they said, I am not in any of the divide. I'm not Fulata, and I'm not Bahuse. So being that as it may, they see me as a neutral government security authority, and whose penetrative involvement to them was taken to be serious and sincere.
Yes, when you speak of they, can you...
I'm talking about headers, Fulani herdsmen. In the Northwest where I serve, they say banditry. The major executioners of banditry, from the way I saw and from the way I have my record, not that I read, that I managed, were Fulani herdsmen. And another major complaint is that even their own contemporary Fulani speaking people, who are now in governance, are educated, they disconnect them. They don't really deal with those ones who are illiterate and who are in the bush. They complain about it. That to the extent that even when they bring their cattle to the market, one intermediary will stand between them and the final buyer. They complain to me. And when adversity befalls them, we don't really do anything for them. So and yet, this is not that they migrated to our zone. They are aborigine of that zone.
Sorry, I have to interject, because they complained to you, and you know, it is good you're telling us this perspective. But what did you do with those complaints?
I'm coming to that.
Yes, we're watching our time. Yes.
I know. Look, time is of essence.
Yes.
But putting it in proper perspective, as part of our adding value to national development, is more important than time. If what we are doing is for national development and national security of our country, listening to ourselves and taking every inch of the conversation with seriousness. But if you make it like academic presentation, well, so be it.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. The point is that these are inbuilt mechanism of aggression that we must address. If you look at the Northwest today, we had many irrigation projects before. How many new ones have we added? How many ones have we maintained? What is the condition of the Bacolore Dam today? Which serves people who do grazing and people who do farming. In the local government areas, these headers who are in the bush, they are not part of the local government governance. What prevents us to make some of them to be councillors? After all, they are in their state of origin. And to be a councillor, you don't need to be speaking English like a Butuaro. You can be a local councillor speaking your local language and contributing to development. Some of these people we call bandits, their parents and grandfathers are living in the local government headquarters. We know their families. Only that they migrate from the settlement area and stay on top of the hill in their communities. That's why there are many. For example, we have up to 300 different groups. We know them, we know their fathers, they are younger ones, they are in the bush. It's a kind of agitation. And we need to create a more. Do you know that some of the states we serve, even to speak full day on television, on radio, which is still part of cultural integration, we don't do it. How do we talk to people when we don't carry them along on a very serious note? And we have to articulate this as security analysts and take it to political authority for execution.
In other words, you are speaking of a widening gulf between, you know,
that is the inclusion I'm talking about, the exclusion.
And then
the
others.
Sure. These people are saying it. Nobody's listening to them.
So I'd like to know what you were going to tell us what you did with those complaints.
I just said what we did. What we did as security authority is to aggregate these real and practical and verifiable grievances and present it to executing body The police, of course, is not the executing body of policy. The political authority has to translate it into action.
State or federal?
It's a state and local.
And that was
state and local. I'm not saying it was not done. No. That's not what I'm saying. No.
What are you saying, sir?
What I'm saying, I'm not on the ground there to assess what is on the ground now. I was there 4 years ago.
But at that time, was it done? Did you see any pathway to implementation of the recommendations you and your team made?
It was in the pipeline before I left. And I don't know whether the pipeline has been opened. The implementation mantra was in the pipeline. Okay, we have a situation whereby even the local government headquarters of our 16 local government areas, then none of the chairmen actually live there.
All right.
So when you add it up,
yes,
you discover that there's governance vacuum. CP. And it's still there to AIG now, not CP again.
Yes, former CP, retired. Yes, I do know that. Yes, calm down. I do know that. Yes.
Thank you, madam.
We are discussing a very serious matter.
Very, very serious.
We do know. But let us look at, from the issues that you have raised, there seemed to be a subtle justification of the killings, really, because there was vacuum, and they're not the only people who neglected. Are also who have been neglected, and who are also agitating and all that, and this extent of killing is not happening. So how do you evaluate the killing against what you have?
The evaluation of this is the primary purpose of government. First is security and welfare. Before 2010, the level of killing in that area was not as much as today. Initially, it was major conflict between the farmers and the herders. And the herders at a point discovered that we, or people in authority, or the establishment, was not really actually doing the needful. So they decided to embark on a kind of a self-help effort by arming themselves more. And then that became a very converted situation. It was at that time that we, the government, ought to have come in drastically. Those who lose cattle, let us buy cattle and give them. Those whose property were destroyed, let's give them money or restitute them, so that they know that the government is an arbiter, providing for them at critical need. At the point, these people started feeling that we are no longer really wanted. Our indigenship and nationality is seen as an inferior type. Therefore, we have to arm ourselves to face it became an existential situation. So the role of government at that time was very, very critical to the escalation or to the containment. For example, policy of even disarmament with payment could have come in. He said, look, we agree you have bought arms to protect yourself. Don't protect yourself. Look, take money, give us the arms. You have lost animal, take money. People who kill your people will go to court, will make sure they enter prison, and we have continuous engagement. Continuous engagement means physical government authority actually sitting with them like this. It is imperative. But those things were not done.
Just a moment, Victor. We're still talking about the bandits.
Sure.
Yes, and banditry. When we had the commissioner, I think one of the commissioners from Katsina State on Tuesday, and we raised the issue of poverty as a driving factor for the crisis and all that. And he was vocal in saying that the bandits are not poor, that it wasn't poverty that was driving banditry in the Northwest.
You are the one talking about poverty. I started by saying it was exclusion and governance vacuum. That's how I started.
You don't have to say poverty. When you say
I didn't say poverty.
Perhaps, okay, can we agree on something?
I say exclusion and governance
Can we agree on something, please? AIG, you said exclusion and governance vacuum. Now, would we be right, let me go with Claire now, that has now driven them into poverty, which is why they are reacting the way they are. Is that the situation?
I did not believe that the issue of poverty. I still insist that is issue of exclusion and governance vacuum.
So they are fighting for inclusiveness.
Good. Exclusion from the mainstream society. What are the mainstream society? Exclusion from having easy access to market, easy access to government assistance, to subsidy, to animal inoculation, which is their mainstay of the economy, to providing them with water point, because in that area, it's more or less a kind of point of Sahelian Nigeria. Water bodies are not always in abundance, as we have in the Middle Belt and the South here. And then what these people have been saying, that they saw this kind of government intervention in their life during Sardauna time. Sardauna was the premier of northern Nigeria. Even when they called Sardauna Farm, they took me there, I saw it. They said these are areas that were giving their forefathers some area of economic inclusion and engagement. But now the trend of government administrators they see now has deviated, or is not really engaging them the way Sardauna took care of them. And they have empirical proofs of this thing. That's the point we are saying. And if you engage them in that way, many other things will be there. The tendency for them to cooperate with foreign bandits or elements that are not indigenous to us, the tendency will come down. Let me tell you, gentlemen, if you show hateful misconduct to people or to persons, even without saying it from your mouth, even an animal, when you show an exclusive disposition, even to an animal, the animal will begin to withdraw. Even a dog in your house. We are not justified. And let me tell you too, these are people who largely do not have Western education. Their sense of logic and reasoning is not as deep as educated people. So for you to bring civilization, control and coordination for people who are less academically endowed, you need to go embark on a kind of policy of rapprochement. Rapprochement means creating situations that make them to draw nearer to you. By so doing, you will be of a veritable influence over them. For example, we are religious people. We are northern Nigeria. In those places, you will see mosque being built by government for people in the town. This is where they come. They don't have mosque. They need it. What is wrong is, I have not finished. What is wrong is
we have to but we have to also accommodate other
please.
people.
All right.
You know, you've made a lot of points, Dr. Kadir Adamu. You've listened to him keenly, I'm sure. He's spoken from experience. Someone who served in a place like Zamfara, where many say is headquarters of banditry. And so he speaks from a position of experience. And I do know that earlier in our conversation on Tuesday, issues of porous borders, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, as well as poverty, you know, were mentioned as enablers. I don't know to what extent you agree, whether it is exclusion or it is poverty, but taking all of this into, or rather, did the summit take all of this, particularly exclusion, into consideration in arriving at the decisions or resolutions that you arrived at?
Yes, it did. And I mean, and for me, that's the beauty of having different stakeholders coming together, because you hear different perspectives. And if you allow me, give me a few minutes, I will read to you the technical sessions that were held. The first technical session was on farmer-herder relations. It looked at how peace and security framework can be inclusive of the cultural, societal, and lifestyle needs of the two constituents, the farmers and the herders, which addresses squarely what the AIG retired was mentioning. It also considered how resources, land, water, energy, can be better protected, managed, and distributed. And I emphasize the word better, which means there was a realization that it's not currently being managed properly. Now, the second panel looked at, the title is Balancing Acts, Exploring Kinetic and Non-Kinetic Strategies for Advancing Peace and Security. So kinetic and non-kinetic, but with the purpose of advancing peace and security. The states in the region have created structures for security. They've created vigilantes, as an example. One of the very interesting conversations in this session was when a psychologist spoke to us about the need for psychosocial support. She more or less corroborated what retired AIG was saying, that the mindsets of some of the threat elements is not what we think. You can't engage with somebody at the level that you are if that person is not at that level. because he or she is either traumatized or is coming from a level that before you even engage with him, you have to bring him to a point where he understands what you are saying. So quite interesting. Then other security practitioners considered the various kinetic, the military, police, other kinetic components, and then the non-kinetic component, and whether we should have a hybrid, a mix of kinetic and non-kinetic to achieve. Also very instructive in this particular panel was that it looked at the root causes, some of what you mentioned, the drivers of the insecurity, and went ahead to recommend measures. So as an example, I think the conclusion was that we should have a hybrid of, let's say, 80% non-kinetic and 20% kinetic, which the governors embraced during the conversations. The third panel looked at socio-economic development, advancing livelihoods and food security for peace and resilience. So things around titling of land, the contribution of livelihood, the correlation actually between the economic circumstances in the region. Don't forget that the region hosts a state that has about 90% poverty rate. For every 10 persons you bring out, 9 of them as existing below the poverty rate. In that state, you give somebody 5 naira, he can go and commit a crime. Sometimes not because he wants to, but because of the circumstances he or she has found himself. I'm not excusing that, but I'm saying that's the reality on ground. It's the region where you see youths entering long vehicles, moving from that region to other parts of the country. What are the drivers? So this panel looked at that and more importantly considered ways to reverse that trend.
In other words, poverty is a factor for you or for the summit.
Socio-economic conditions.
Okay,
yes.
Semantics.
I think we should Dr. Kabiru, let us call a spade. What is it? Because even the Medicine Sans Frontiers are reporting, great humanitarian and poverty in those
states. Yes. But very interesting. Let me just continue. I'll get to that. The fourth panel talked about ending kidnap for ransom. That's where banditry was discussed extensively. And very interestingly, the eco space for banditry beyond what AIG was mentioning. So AIG, let me shock you a little bit. One of the things that came up, and in fact I was the one who expounded it, extortion by security agencies. So cattle rustling, it's a manifestation of both the farmer herder violence and the banditry challenge. Now, when a herder's cattle is rustled and he goes to the police to report it, we have documented evidence that he is extorted by the same persons who he has reported to. So that was discussed extensively. Access to justice and its contribution. Justice, the whole range of justice, from law enforcement to the courts. A goat that is worth, let's say, 70 naira, and then the judge prices it at 20 naira. And then he now colludes with somebody to pay that 20 naira. And then before you know it, they go and cut it and share the meat among themselves. All those are happening. Or they see a beautiful girl married to somebody. I hate to say this, but it's a reality. And I was hoping AIG would mention it. It is part of the contributing challenge. They would see the wife of a herder who is beautiful. They would cause a divorce between them through the judicial process, and one of them would marry that lady. It's happening, it's documented. So all of this was discussed as a contributing factor. Access to justice. There are so many other components around the banditry. Kidnap, it was covered under kidnap for ransom, but some components of this. And then the last one is sustainable finance. In other words, what are the ways of improving access to finance? So land titling, the region in terms of land mass is probably the biggest in the country, but it's useless to the region. So 2 of the ministers, or 3 of them, so many aspects of the conference that was quite interesting. The ministers discussed this issue, in particular the governor of Zamfara, who has a background in finance. I think he was a banker. Yep. He made very interesting contributions. And he also told the conference how he has been able in 1 year to reverse the low IGR trend within his state. And everybody in that conference was quite excited. So point I'm trying to make is these 5 key areas contributed to a very diverse discussion. And I also found something very interesting, which was not very clear in the conference, but it was very clear to me. Peer-to-peer learning. If you notice, Jigawa and Kano have relatively very low security challenges in the region. Now, the governors, in particular of Jigawa, the governor of Kano was not there, but that of Jigawa was there. The governor of Kano was represented by his deputy. But that of Jigawa spoke extensively around how they've been able to manage some of these challenges. So that provided some form of peer-to-peer learning. The same, it's a homogeneous region. And so if one governor is doing X, as an example, they spoke about how there's an institution, I think it was set up by, I can't remember which president, but it's on soil and agricultural research, and how they partnered with a Brazilian research institute to look at various components of the agricultural value chain and how it has helped reduce the economic challenges within the region, and how hopefully with the research that institution is doing, it will help improve production. One conversation that I think touched a lot of persons in the conference, including myself, is the discussion on sustainable economy, where the Food and Agricultural Organization country rep, who is from Cote d'Ivoire, spoke extensively around the need to enhance our agricultural value. He talked about, he used the French word, which in English means scaling up. And his essence is that his organization is there to support Nigeria scale up our agricultural productivity.
I'll take you up on this aspect of international support from our international partners, because there's also a report, and just in March, by some of our international partners working in this northwest states, also complaining that, look, our international partners have really not seen the crisis in these regions, as crisis enough, and that some of the issues that we have raised have been neglected. And I want to be specific from the report I'm getting, that the MSF is calling, he said, look, they don't think that the UN has really taken this as an interest enough, and they are calling for UN's, more deeper participation to strengthen their efforts in those areas. I would want you to respond to that, but please hold on. I just want retired AIG Abutuyaro to respond before we get back to Dr.
Getso.
Yes, Getso. I'm sure that what Dr. Kabiru talked about, access to justice, didn't happen during your time. Yes, but would you like to speak to that?
It's not a time frame phenomenon. It's a systemic characteristics he was outlining. And he's not really saying that within a certain time frame, it's an over time. And the reason for that is still simple. It goes to the issue of exclusion I was talking about. What is exclusion? Exclusion.
No, I mean by security agents.
That is what I'm saying. I say it goes to the issue of seclusion. What am I saying? Let us assume that in most of these rural communities, this endangered species, as I would like to call them, the marginalized group, that is the herdsmen, they are part of institutional framework that exists in our system. The tendency for them to become victims in the most bizarre manner, as I said, will be less. For example, what is wrong in making a Fulani man to be part of the lay area court team, this customary court team, so that as their cases are coming, the Fulani man, who is a native of that area, will have his own perspective to justice delivery. Even at the police station, in those localities, most of the police stations in that area we are talking about, they're always very closely located to the area courts. So if these people, to an extent, they are involved in the local security administration, the tendency for anybody, either in uniform or out of uniform, to actually treat them as an outcast and easily take their wife with impunity, easily take their money with impunity, the tendency will be less. But when their presence, their visibility in our urban life and institutional life is minimal or very, very intangible, the tendency for this kind of oppressive conduct, in the way and manner Dr. Kabir has said, will always be there. We know we are Nigerians. We always have this feeling that if somebody's person is not in the institutional arena, that person can always be pushed aside as nobody.
We know ourselves. It's still part of the thing I'm talking about. So that is why I said inclusion is very, very, very important in our daily life. We could not just treat it, in as much as because this would not speak English, it's not enough for them, for us to begin to assume that they are living in animal kingdom or they are living in a Hobbesian life, and we ignore them with impunity. By so doing, institutional intimidation in the way and manner Dr. has will continue to increase.
All right. Thank you, Dr. AIG Abutu Yaro, retired. Let's quickly get to Dr. Yahuza Getso, who has joined us via Zoom from Katsina. Doctor, I hope you have managed to listen to what the studio guests have said. I just want you to react, perhaps, to the contributions of our studio guests. Now, Dr. Abutu Yaro has spoken extensively about what he calls exclusion. Well, Dr. Kabir Adamu didn't quite say poverty, but he agreed that they are, worse off. They are not as well-to-do as those other people. So let me not use the word poverty since he doesn't want to use it. But do you agree with these positions? And if you do, how do we begin to make amends? Because this will lean heavily on governors of these states.
Well, I quite agree with both positions. I'm still maintain the position that anybody who is linking poverty to what is happening in the case of banditry, I think is missing the link or did not really understand the situation. I'm a community-based and forest-based researcher. I know where the bandits are. I know who they are. I have been to their locations severally. And I intermingle around all the criminals and crimes in the northwestern forest and in all parts of African forest. So I'm always looking for where a criminal is to interact with on the perspective of understanding the situation. So I don't believe that these guys are poor. They are as rich as you may not ever think of. They are quite rich, they are not poor. And I believe with the AI of disconnect, believe with Dr. Kabiru in respect to the need to improve the socio economic and socio cultural values. And it is very clear that if we really want to be sincere and honest in dealing with this situation, what we need to do is, one, to find a way of reconnecting this institution of a Fulani institution or headsman institution, because the issue is the fact that bandits are not purely Fulanis. There are a number of camps that they are purely houses. They are purely houses, they are carrying arms, and they have camps like the Fulani also have. And you need to ask yourself, question, who has been providing them with social needs? As I'm concerned, I honestly and sincerely believe in all the positions, only that I disagree that poverty is one of the reasons why these people are taking arms or doing what they are doing. And to be optimistic, I want to tell you that none of this, mentioned by the AIG, none of these guys are foreigner. Let me just talk about the geographical context. You have Bazari, you have Jibia, you have Safi, you have Kankara, you have Faskari, you have Dandime, you have Sabua, you have Matazu, you have Musawa. These are combined. You have Bindi Magaji, you have Auranamode, you have Zonu Shinkafi, Isa and Gorengo. These are the combined local governments from Sokoto, Zamfara, and the Katsina states. And I want to tell you that 99.9% of the bandits operating in all of these LGS are citizens and indigents of those LGS. And if for any reason you take any of them out of his own LGA to the next LGA, he cannot be able to live, he cannot be able to survive he cannot be able to socially and economically interact with the next LGA where he is not from. So I maintain my position that we know who are these guys and we know who they are. We know where they are. They are not at any hidden place. It is only the issue of having a commitment, a political will to manage the situation. We have been using kinetic approach over time, and I believe sincerely with Dr. Kabiru and other opinion leaders that we need to change, we need to make a shift using more of non-kinetic approach and developmental approach so that these people will feel that they are part of us, of Nigeria, and they are part of the governing these places. In a situation whereby security being conducted in 12 months, you will never see a local government chairman in attendance. Most of the security council meetings at the state levels are not being laid by the governors themselves. So the policy makers themselves are not attending, and those who are attending those security discussions and those security meetings are not the real decision makers. So if we really do it right, we need to come back and improve on 7 items. 1, governance issue. 2, conduct census on these guys and deal with them accordingly, either using kinetic or non-kinetic approach. 3, the approach being utilized between the state government and the federal government, because there is no shift in power, whereby the federal government approach is entirely different from the opinion of the governors of Northwestern states. So there is need to harmonize and to have a kind of coordination, improve in coordination between the federal institutions and the state governors of the Northwestern states, by extension, that of Niger, Benue, and Kogi. Because like mentioned by Dr. Kabiru, these guys are using the forestic, taking forestic advantage. If you give me a motorbike myself that I'm taking to you from Enugu, I can cross all to Burkina Faso without crossing on a third road. And I know these places. From Enugu, I can go all to Mali, all to Sebo in Mali, without crossing on a third road. That is as ordinary as a research. What of those herdsmen whose business is all more of that forest? And this issue of grazing lands, the governors, the local government chairman distributed it among themselves and among their errands. So how do you expect these guys to continue to intimidate them socially, economically, and you continue to intimidate them using impunity? Where do you want them to survive? And it is very easy. Interaction between them and the foreign herders who normally come during the cultivation period is part of the supporting reason, is part of way where arms are being proliferated into northern Nigeria. Up till now, nobody is talking about it. I started reporting the proliferation of arms since the year 2001. This thing didn't start now. It started very long ago, but it hasn't been managed well, coupled with issues around social justice and so on and so forth.
Thank you. You've raised a number of points. Indeed, everyone here, has done, justice to this, some of the questions that we have asked. And we will come back to the studio, and I will allow Dr. Kabiru Adamu to speak when we come back from this break.
The federal government of Nigeria wants vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Meet lovebirds Jayola and Adama Davies.
Their dream of living together as man and wife has finally been fulfilled.
The latest couple in town, Mr. and Mrs. Giant David!
But an invasion by their troublesome families was not a scenario they bargained for. Her mother moves in. His mother shows up with his little niece. Then her younger sister joins the scramble.
You want to stay?
Married life suddenly becomes very complicated even before it started. Follow their story on this channel as they confront every challenge as it comes. Family forever, the story of our lives.
This na Go TV, and now for here you fit watch better football from Mbappe. Ball wey Kane use the TNet, Ronaldo. And all the big boys we go follow drag the who go be Oga of Europe. Now who go become the Baba of Europe? Watch all the 51 games live on Top Super Sport from GoTV Jolly to Super Plus and GoTV Stream. Euro 2024 live. It goes sweet on Top GoTV. Love it.
All right, welcome back. Quite an enlightening conversation. Dr. Kabir Adamu, let's begin to look at what can be done. At least we're not privy, to the work plan yet, but we can, suggest solutions on what can be done in the short run. But I just wanted to find out what MSF, the allegations MSF is making about our international partners not showing enough interest in the crisis in these areas.
The truth of it is all donor commitment is driven by interests. Let's not kid ourselves about that. There is no donor organization that will come to you that would come without the
having its own agenda.
Exactly. And as far as I know, the international donor community at the moment is driven by certain issues. As an example, women empowerment, climate change, of course, gender violence, and things like that. Now, unfortunately, the situation in the Northwest has not been documented enough to allow for the disaggregation of the various challenges. So as an example, we know that women are being affected, but there is no documentary evidence in terms of the numerical numbers, evidence that would show how many women have been affected and all of that. So that, I think, is part of the challenge. But it would also be, I would say, wrong to say that the international community has not shown interest. I am aware that the INGO Forum, which is the umbrella body of all international non-governmental organizations in Nigeria, has an, I think, action plan, a development plan. I can't remember the exact title. 2020, I can't remember the years, the range, but about 4 years, and that it was able to identify development needs, especially humanitarian, for up to a period. And from what we are told during the conference, they've been able to raise a certain amount of money to allow for interventions in different areas in the Northwest. I also know that the EU, not too long ago, held a conference, a summit, a meeting, where they highlighted the Northwest development challenge. The conference itself is an indication that the international community is now beginning to focus on the Northwest. Like I mentioned, it was facilitated by the UN system with the support of the German and the Netherlands government. So I'm quite happy. I also mentioned that it looked like the mistakes they made in the Northeast, they are trying to avoid it here in the Northwest. And I agree with them. What happened in the Northwest is, over time, a dependence syndrome, for lack of a better word, developed, where a significant portion of the affected community started depending, as it were, on aid from these communities. And that's not the idea. The idea is to support and then, of course, either hand over to government or allow people to go back to their livelihoods. But where a trend of dependence is sustained then the whole idea of humanitarian and development aid would be useless. And so I think that is what they're trying to avoid in the Northwest, where they will work with the governments, but allow the governments to be in the forefront for those type of development.
But would you also suggest a time frame? I mean, from the international community, okay, so look, between this time, and this time, this is the time we can provide you with the support. If, we don't see positive or significant progress in implementation, well, you're on your own. Is something like that likely to happen?
I mean, let's be very realistic. I started by saying that all donor organizations have their interests. The onus is on us as Nigerians to ensure that the interventions are guided in a manner that our national interest is protected.
Beautiful.
And in that, I want to call on the federal government with all sense of responsibility, especially if you look at the Renewed Hope agenda. And please, I would pray and hope that NTA sends this message to those that matter. The Renewed Hope agenda talks about developing frameworks for addressing security at the regional level. It is one of the priorities that is mentioned in the Renewed Hope agenda, that the coordinating elements within our national security architecture would develop frameworks for addressing security at the regional level. That has been presented to the administration by this conference. And I'm a bit concerned that the federal government's role in the conference is laid back. The Vice President was there. He made a speech on behalf of the President. The Office of the National Security Advisor was there. The Minister of Defense was there in person. Several other federal government officials were there. But because I participated in the process and because this is a public era, I would leave it to say that the federal government was a bit laid back. But the opportunity is there. It is a low-hanging fruit that the federal government, the administration, can use as an example to say we have developed the first regional framework that can now be emulated in the other framework. Now, what's the importance of this? Each of the regions have peculiar security challenges. You can't use one a stroke of brush to address the security challenges across the region. Obviously. Now, because stakeholders have come together in the Northwest and have sat down and are now discussing. Remember, in their opening remarks, we discussed that a committee will be set up. The federal government should be represented in that committee.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Let me get back to AIG Abutuyaro retired. Now, a lot has been said regarding the absence of governance or a governance vacuum in most of these places. And I'm wondering, as a solution, would you think that if the local governments are functional as prescribed by the Constitution, if we can get that running, that we could significantly address the issues at stake?
Thank you. Yes, to that, with further explanation. You are aware that our people are used to grassroots governance right from the colonial time. The local government system must be made to function as it was designed originally. For example, we are having a situation now whereby we have 4 layers of administration in our country. We have federal administration, we have state administration, we have local government administration, which is grassroots, and we have natural rulers administration. The natural rulers are those ones controlling the districts, who the people even revere so much. That's why when you see our people coming to a natural ruler, see them stooping, lying down, or squatting. If you see our people squatting for a governor, they are either begging for money or they are looking for contract. There is no emotional attachment there. But when you see them with our traditional life, you see them kneeling down, squatting, or lying down flat. We have muzzled those essential aspects of governmental layers, which is the natural rulers layers of governance, the grassroots layers of governance, local government. We need to go back to that. That is what our people believe in, and this is what can actually extend the security scope of our country. And this is so in the sense that the local government should be able to work independently. What we have now in all parts of the country, Northwest exclusively, most local government areas, they are all appointees of the governors. You see them groveling around government house every day. They are more or less PAs instead of staying in their local government for governance. Even the people doesn't even know them. Under that circumstance, that is the governance vacuum I'm talking about. And who will people relate to? People need to relate with somebody as an authority of government, which will modulate their thinking, which will modulate their opinion. And the worst of all, now the traditional, our natural rulers that we so very revered, we are now emasculating them indirectly. In many states I don't want to call, including my own state. We'll remove them by force, we'll suspend them by... I mean, this is profanity. And at the end of the day, our subjects, our local people, both in those ones in the bush, those ones on the farm, on the street, they begin to look at those of us in governance as a set of people who are having inordinate ambition, different from governance, engaging them and prolonging their circumstances to make their circumstances better. Then this Northwest security so much we are talking about, there's one critical omission there. I'm happy that Dr. Keberu is here and we have to make amends with the organizers. The security configuration of Northwest without Niger State is still, it's still an anathema.
Niger was there.
Because what I'm saying, sir, most time when they say they're calling Northwest, they don't include Niger.
It was there.
If you look at it originally, Niger State was Northwest, part of Northwestern State before they created it. And when you look at the contiguous nature of Niger State to Kebbi, to Sokoto, and the forested areas of Niger State, particularly Borgu, to be that area. Then from there you penetrate to Zungeru and penetrate to Yauri. We must organize Northwest Security Summit and have an amalgam of security policies and action that incorporates Niger State. On the security map of Nigeria, we should run Niger State as part of Northwest. If not, all the criminal elements will drive them from the other parts of Northwest, the traditional Northwest, which your map is saying it now. They will go back, they will recede into Niger State territory. And from there, they will be coming to be attacking. And the systemic situation will continue. There's need for all of us to have a review and incorporate and assimilate Niger State in the security architecture of Northwest for us to get the tangible result. In addition, we must be able to look at our local government laws in the states in the Northwest and other states in the country to ensure that we should have what we call honorable councillors. People who come to the council, not because of popular election, but because they represent strategic... Honorary councillors.
Honorary councillors.
Who represent strategic interest. And one of them is this Fulanis in the bush. Particularly in the states where they are aborigine, like in Zamfara. All their parents are in the town. It's the boys that are in the bush. And all of them are forming camps in their own districts.
Wouldn't that require a constitutional...
It's not constitutional. Local government law is largely within the domain of state assembly. That's the same assembly, assembly they have used to hijack local government. To the extent that now, even federal government took them to court for snatching local government money. So where do we go from here? And without money, how can this local government provide security? How can they have network of informants? How can the DPO, the OCSS in local government area, how can they have a working security synergy with their chairman? A chairman is always by the gate of the government house every day, waiting as a PA, taking instructions. It doesn't work in that way. We will not allow even other parties to win, except the governor's party. At the end of the day, it boils down to see that even the local population, those on the street and in the bush, they begin to see us at the upper level of government as another breed of people who are pursuing something different.
I don't know.
And that is why coordinating them and bringing them to sensibility is becoming a challenge, because people have to believe in your sincerity first. These people who are illiterate, they are adults like us. They may not hear English, but they have a lot of common and workable senses.
Yes, please let's get Dr. Getso to also come in, make some contribution. I really don't know how that issue of honorary, councillor can work out, because even the state assembly that will legislate on that, you are also, so it's I don't know, but Dr. Yauza Getso, what do you think?
Well, if we really want to be serious we need to have a community-driven strategy whereby the communities will be the owners of the process of electioneering, where the community will be deciding of who will be the councillor, who will be the local government chairman, and also to have a mechanism of holding the local government chairman and state assembly members accountable for what they elected them for. But what are having now, like mentioned by the retired AIG, what you have is more of errand local government chairman, errand boys, the members of the state as more focused, because most of them were not elected, they were anointed, they were nominated. So as far as we are concerned, the northwestern governors and Niger State inclusive, like we keep reiterating, is the fact that the state governors must take ownership of the security situation in the region, because whosoever will come to the region to support us here in the region will not have it like we taking the ownership and being responsible enough to manage the situation. I keep repeating, we know the criminals. They have, anybody who is saying that they don't have mark, I know they have mark, because in any local government I go, I can show you the political what, I can show you the polling unit, I can show you the communities where where it's under their control. So if you have this, it is very easy. We can't allow less than 3,500 people to take control against more than 11 million. The total number, I conducted a census, which I shared with the Senate, the present Senate, and the total number of all these bandits that you have in 9 states, not even 7 states of the northwestern state, they are not up to 3,500. And we say, I keep saying, I know who they are, I know where they are, and I know the security agencies, the traditional leaders, the so-called local government chairmen, and the governors themselves. They know where they are and they know who they are. We have their names, we have their profile. Why can't we take ownership and be responsible enough to deal with situation accordingly, rather than beating around the bush? Let's be serious. It's manageable, I believe. I mean, rebuilding the confidence and trust of the northwestern governors and Niger State that the security situation challenges that we have in northwestern part of the country, including Niger State, is manageable. And it's something that we can manage within 3 months if we can be serious. I believe that we can easily manage this situation within 3 months. We can reduce it at least by 60 to 65% or 70% degree within 3 months. If we can have a serious system, if we can really take the ownership and be responsible enough, and also have it at the back of our mind that what was discussed during the summit, the 2-day summit in Katsina, which I believe we have discussed extensively, and many possible solutions have been provided. And if these solutions can be implemented sincerely and honestly within 6 months, the security challenges in northwestern part of the country and Niger State can be reduced up to 65 to 75 degrees. So, but the issue is about political will, the determination, who is ready to do what? Are we going to allow those who are everybody to take his own responsibility? How are we going to allow the ownership to take place in terms of the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, and all other community-driven mechanisms that we have? Is manageable and is something that can be managed and something that can be addressed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yahuza Getso. Let's get back here in the studio, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, as we gradually wind down. In fact, not gradually, we're almost out of time completely. But quickly, how can different agencies with unique capabilities and jurisdictions work together to provide a more comprehensive, coverage of the potential threats that we have identified so far?
Okay, thank you. So let me start by quickly making a clarification. Fulanis are holding leadership positions in the Northwest. In fact, most of the traditional rulers in the Northwest are Fulanis, or at least have their roots in Fulani. I want to make it very clear, and I think AIG knows what I'm talking about. The challenge is multidimensional, it is complex, and only looking at it from that angle will help us address the issue. In other words, I agree that there is exclusion, but the exclusion is deeper than perhaps what we've discussed in this program. Now, to answer your question, it's by having a framework for addressing that challenge, a framework that allows each of the stakeholders to contribute. In our discussion here, we've identified different aspects of the challenge. At the moment, security is in the exclusive list. And that is why I insist that the federal government should take the lead. Until I'm seeing a trend, and it worries me as a security expert, the regionalization of security. The southern governors held a meeting. They've discussed security. Northwest is holding a meeting. Northeast have held. Southeast have held. So in practical terms, security is being decentralized, even though it has not been decentralized in the Constitution. And as a country, we need to take note of that. So the federal government should take the lead. And I've given ideas on how that should be done. The framework should be developed that will allow each.
I have to, just in less than 30 seconds, please. How can governors begin to show political will now?
Governors can begin to show political will now by way of recommitting themselves to the ideals of security and governance. You know, it's a question of mindset. If a governor in a month, you stay 3 weeks in Abuja, and you only come to your state to pay salary and enter the next aircraft, you know that we are still nowhere. If as a governor within 3 months, you hardly see, people hardly see you, no township engagement, no engagement with anybody, you are just a visiting governor, it will not work. So how they can do it is a recommitment. Because to me, agreeing with Dr. Kabiru that the federal government has it, but I still believe that in the field engagement of coordinating security, the governors have a higher stake. You saw on television recently, one governor complaining out about all the federal security available to him, how he could not use them. You could have asked him, how has he been using his security vote? If all right. So all these things are issues.
AIG Abutuyaro retired. We have to go. AIG Abutuyaro is a retired AIG Zone 13, former CP, Edo, Zamfara, and Imo States, among other positions that he occupied. We thank you very much for your perspective.
Thank you for having me.
Let me also thank Dr. Yahuza Getso, security intelligence and investigation expert and consultant to Katsina State Government. We thank you very much for your time on the program.
Well, thank you for having me. All
right, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, security risk analyst. Thank you very much, as always, for being on Good Morning Nigeria. And let me apologize before we go that we couldn't bring you the second topic which we had mentioned, the MSMEs award. It gives a sense of how important, how serious the security issue is, and that we had to deal with it the whole of the program. I am Victor Azu. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdulrasak. Bye-bye.